Hi, I'm Parneet Jaggi, and in this video, we will be looking at the novel Beloved by Toni Morrison in a detailed way. The way the story of the novel moves is typical of Toni Morrison's style of writing, as she is a representative of the black rights in the world. Now, as we know from the earlier videos, Beloved was a popular novel in terms of its relevance, in terms of its significance of the theme, and also a Pulitzer Prize winner. So, let's have a view at the plot of the novel. Now, we know that it is based on a real story. Most of the works, in fact, of Toni Morrison were based on real life incidents. And Beloved begins in Cincinnati, Ohio, around 1873, where this lady, Seed, who is a former slave, has been living with her 18-year-old daughter, Denver. Here is how the novel actually starts. Now, Said's mother in law also lives with them before she dies. Her name is Baby Suggs. And Baby Suggs lived with this family until her death 8 years earlier. And just after Baby Suggs' death, Seed's two sons, Howard and Burglar, they run away, they leave the home. And Seed believes that they fled because of the malevolent presence of an abusive ghost that had haunted their house at 124 Bluestone Road for years. Denver, however, likes the ghost which everyone believes to be the spirit of her dead sister. Now we see that on the day when novel begins, there is a person called Paul D, whom Seed has not seen since they had worked together on Mr. Garner's Sweet Home plantation in Kentucky. This was approximately 20 years earlier. He stops by Seed's house. So now here we come to know that there has been a story in Seed's life 20 years back when she was working in a sweet home plantation in Kentucky, and that was the time this person Paul D used to work with him. So now when he arrives at her doorstep, all the memories of her past come to the mind. And his presence actually resurrects those memories that were lying buried in Seed's mind for almost 2 decades. And from this point on, we notice that the story unfolds itself on two temporal planes. The present plane is in Cincinnati, while a series of events which took place around 20 years earlier were mostly in a place called Kentucky, which constitutes the other plane. Now, this latter plane is accessed and described through flashbacks of major characters. So, accordingly, we frequently read these flashbacks several times, sometimes from different perspectives, with each successive narration of an event adding a little more information to the previous one. Now, we notice that from these fragmented memories, the following story begins to emerge. We see that Seed is the protagonist of the story. She was born in the South to an African mother whom she never knew. And when she is 13, she is sold to the Garners, who own this sweet home and practice a comparatively benevolent kind of a slavery. Now there are other men, other slaves on that land who are all men. They lust after her, but they never touch her. Now these men are Sixo, Paul D, Paul A, Paul F, and Halle. Seed chooses to marry Halle, apparently because he is proven generous enough to buy his mother's freedom by hiring himself out on the weekends. So together, Seed and Halle have two sons, Howard and Burglar, as well as a baby daughter whose name we do not know. Now, when she leaves Sweet Home, Seed is also pregnant with a fourth child, and after the eventual death of the proprietor, Mr. Garner, who was looking after that sweet home, the widowed Mrs. Garner asks her sadistic, vehemently racist brother in law to help her run the farm. Now, this person is known to the slaves as a school teacher, and his oppressive presence makes life on the plantation even more unbearable for all of them than it had been before. So, therefore, these slaves decide to run. Now, this person, school teacher, a very cunning person, and his nephews anticipate the slaves' escape, however, and they capture Paul D and Sixo. School teacher kills Sixo and brings Paul D back to Sweet Home, where Paul D sees Seed for what he believes will be the last time. But now Seed is still intent on running, having already sent her children ahead to her mother-in-law baby Sug's house in Cincinnati. And so invigorated by the recent capture, school teacher's nephews seize Seed in the barn and violate her, stealing the milk her body is storing for an infant daughter, unborn to Seed. And unknown to Seed, Hele is watching the event from a loft above her where he lies frozen with horror. Afterward, Hele goes mad, and Paul D sees him sitting by a churn with butter slathered all over his face. Paul D, meanwhile, is forced to suffer the indignity of wearing an iron bit in his mouth. So these slaves have to bear all these tortures on that farm. Now, when the school teacher finds out that Said has reported his and his nephew's misdeeds to Mrs. Garner, he has her whipped severely, despite the fact that she is pregnant. Swollen and scarred, Seed nevertheless runs away. But along the way, she collapses from exhaustion in a forest. A white girl, Amy Denver, finds her and nurses her back to health. And when Amy later helps Seed deliver her baby in a boat, Seed names the second daughter as Denver after the girl who helped her. Seed receives further help from Stamp Paid, who rows her across the Ohio River to Baby Suggs' house, and Baby Suggs cleans Seed up before allowing her to see her 3 older children. Now, Seed spends 28 wonderful days in Cincinnati, where Baby Suggs serves as an unofficial preacher to the black community. On the last day, however, school teacher comes for Seed to take her and her children back to Sweet Home. Rather than surrender her children to the life of dehumanizing slavery, she flees with them to the woodshed and tries to kill them. Only the 3rd child, her older daughter, dies, her throat having been cut with a handsaw by Seed. Seed later arranges for the baby's headstone to be carved with the word beloved. The sheriff takes Seed and Denver to jail, but a group of white abolitionists led by the Baldwins fight for her release. Seed returns to the house at 124. Where Baby Suggs, her mother-in-law, has sunk into a deep depression. The community shuns the house and the family continues to live in isolation. So meanwhile, we notice that Paul D has endured torturous experiences in a chain gang in Georgia, where he was sent after trying to kill Brandywine, a slave owner to whom he was sold by the school teacher. His traumatic experiences have caused him to lock away his memories, emotions, and ability to love in the tin tobacco box of his heart. So one day, a rainstorm allows Paul D and the other chain gang members to escape. He travels northward by following the blossoming spring flowers, and years later, he ends up on Seed's porch in Cincinnati. So while looking at the flashback, now we see that Paul D's arrival at 124 commences the series of events taking place in the present time frame. So prior to moving in, Paul D chases the house resident ghost away, which makes the already lonely Denver resent him from the starting. Seed and Paul D look forward to a promising future together until one day, on their way home from a carnival, they encounter a strange young woman sleeping near the steps of 124. Now, 124 is the name of the house where Seed lives. So, most of the characters believe that this woman, who calls herself Beloved, is the embodied spirit of Seed's dead daughter, and the novel provides a wealth of evidence supporting this interpretation. And we notice that this girl, Denver, develops an obsessive attachment to Beloved, and Beloved's attachment to Seed is equally, if not more, intense. But we also notice that Paul D and Beloved hate each other, and Beloved controls Paul D by moving him around the house like a rag doll and by seducing him against his will. Now, when Paul D learns the story of Seed's rough choice, her infanticide, he leaves 124 and he begins sleeping in the basement of the local church. In his absence, Seed and Beloved's relationship becomes more intense and exclusive. We see that Beloved grows increasingly abusive, manipulative, and parasitic. She clings to Seed, and Seed is obsessed with satisfying Beloved's demands and making her understand why she murdered her. So, worried by the way her mother is wasting away, Denver leaves the premises of 124 for the first time in 12 years in order to seek help from Lady Jones, her former teacher. The community provides the family with food and eventually organizes under the leadership of Ella, a woman who had worked on the Underground Railroad and helped with Seed's escape, in order to exorcise Beloved from 124. When they arrive at Seed's house, they see Seed on the porch with Beloved, who stands smiling at them, naked and pregnant. Mr. Bodwin, who has come to 124 to take Denver to her new job, arrives at the house. Mistaking him for school teacher, Seed runs at Mr. Bodwin with an ice pick. She is restrained, but in the confusion, Beloved disappears, never to return. Afterwards, Paul D comes back to Seed, who has retreated to baby Sug's bed to die. Mourning Beloved, Seed laments, "She was my last thing." But Paul D replies, "You your best thing, Seed." Now, the novel here ends with a warning that this is not a story to pass on. The town and even the residents of 124 have forgotten Beloved. I like an unpleasant dream during a troubling sleep. So here is how the novel ends, on a tragic, a mysterious and enigmatic note. So we see that the ending is not conventional or smooth like the other novels have, but on the whole we see the novel working on kind of the torments of slavery all through, whether it is on men, women, or the pain that children have to die throughout in the process of slavery. So this was a brief synopsis of how the novel Beloved proceeds with its characters with two plots in a flashback technique. So we'll come back with the questions of the novel. Thank you for now.